I'm Dan Carlson, one third of us three blokes.
I'm John Cadolf, the other third of us three blokes.
Hi, I'm Dave Nesbitt, and I was kidnapped by the Jejune Society. But I'm also the second of three members of us three blokes, and I have beer.
I've also got Wild Hunt Mead.
Oh, nice.
Oh, boy.
Yep. Spiced blood orange and cranberry mead.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is made by the Groenfell Meadery in Vermont.
Ooh.
Yeah. In St. Albans, Vermont.
Oh.
And I'm going to try this out. My
So-
niece gave this to me for my birthday.
Is it your niece or your super niece?
My niece.
Okay.
Although you give me
she's
the
old-
mead, you automatically
older.
get promoted.
Yeah. My super niece, and just to clarify again, I don't like the term grand because it makes me feel old. So I've co-opted the word super and placed it instead of grand. So instead of grand niece, I say super niece. But no, this is from my older niece, who is just my niece, not
Super niece.
You're going to
super
make
niece.
sense any minute now. I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. She gave this to me for my birthday, and along with three others, one of which I've drunk already, and I'm going to do this one now.
Okay.
Yes.
We watched a documentary on Dave's recommendation from 2013 called The Institute.
Yes, we did.
And I'm going to let Dave take the reins because it's his baby.
Okay. The Institute is a documentary about a ongoing, the technical term for it, although the guy who devised it, hold it. I don't know if this is the first orgasm that we have seen on this show,
Yes.
but it's the first one
Definitely.
that I've witnessed.
Definitely not.
Ooh. I like it.
I was getting that. Yeah, I had
Yeah.
a feel for that. Yeah.
Okay. The Institute, 2013.
Is a documentary about, for lack of any other better term, an alternate reality game that took place in San Francisco and Oakland between 2008 and 2011, where the people who ran the game put up these odd flyers for things that really had no business existing, like a means and method of turning your memories into media, or being able to look back in time, or things like that. And so there would be these flyers, and then there'd be the typical strips with phone numbers on the bottom. And if you called the number, you were directed to go to an office in the financial district of San Francisco, California. And you would walk in and you would be directed into this thing, and you would into a room where you would sit down and be given a video to watch, and you would find that you were being inducted into this thing called the Jejune Society. And as
Is it
you
the
went
Jejune
on,
Society or Jejune Institute? I thought that's where that.
I think it's you can go either way because I've heard both terms used for it.
Okay.
And what you had basically just done is stepped into the opening part of this alternate reality game where you were given consistent directions for the rest of the day to go from this office and escape the office without being seen, and then go around the city of San Francisco and find all of these odd things that they had put up around the city that were telling you the story of this young lady by the name of Eva Lucian, Evolution, who
Oh, I thought it was Ava.
Oh,
well, Ava, but if you
God.
think about it, Ava.
Yeah.
How did
Okay.
I not?
I did not see that. So yeah, okay.
I was halfway through it, and then it hit me, and I was like, I'm a schmuck. Anyway.
I just want to I want to point out something that totally kind of semi tangentially related. So in Angel Heart, Al Pacino or Robert De Niro plays the Satan figure, and his name is Louis Cypher.
Cypher, yep.
Lucifer. And anyway, I was watching that PETEY WHEATSTRAW movie with Dolomite, and the devil's name in there was Lou Cypher.
Yep.
So I feel like the guy who wrote the book that Angel Heart was based on had seen some blaxploitation and said, I'm going to make a serious movie about this.
Yeah, and have a little fun with it.
Yeah. But okay, sorry, digression. Go ahead.
Okay, so anyway, your job in this game is to help find evolution. And as you go in, you discover that there is the Jejun Society, and then there is another organization that's opposed to them, and both of them are fighting over control of this thing called holy nonchalance. And the thing that really kind of, again, this is going to be my digression, there is a voice for Commander 14 that you hear periodically in this film. And I started laughing the second I heard him, because he is one of the co-founders of the Church of the Subgenius, which is a group that came out of Dallas, Texas, that is a parody religion. That is a parody religion that is kind of like the forefather of this entire thing. I think the guy who put this game together contacted the people at the Church of the Subgenius, or was in the same circle with them and drafted some of them in to help create some of what was going on. And the entire idea was that the guy who created this entire experience was like, we go through our lives every day looking at the same buildings, taking the same routes to work, and we never really lift our eyes up to see anything outside of our usual experiences. And he created something where he turned the cities of San Francisco and Oakland into a playground where you suddenly, the world became brighter and more interesting and more, like colors were far more interesting. And, it was like living in a parallel reality to your own. And the people who were in the game, by the time they were done, they had about 10,000 active players in the game. And, eventually, due to him finding a company that he wanted to work for, and he wouldn't have the time to do it, and also just basically running out of money for the game, because they did some stuff in there that was horrendously expensive. Like renting an office in a building in the financial district of San Francisco, or building a small low-power FM radio station. Doing things like that.
I kind of wish they had skimped a little on that stuff and spent more on getting people up by phone booths dancing with Sasquatches.
Yeah, that's another thing. And the funny part is that there is a TV series based off of this entire situation called Dispatches from Elsewhere. And people I know watched the series, and they got to the part where the main character, who is played by Jason Segel, plays out that scene where he's dancing in the rain with a group of B-boys and a Sasquatch. And people are like, oh, come on. Now that's where I broke with reality. And then I sent them the actual video of multiple people doing this in San Francisco. And again, it was a way to make the world a little bit more interesting and a little bit more surreal. The idea is to kind of, there's a thing called the modern playground movement, where you take the city and turn the city itself into a playground for yourself. And this is kind of like one of the leading parts of it.
Explain for me,
okay,
and our audience, what holy nonchalance is.
Holy nonchalance is the ability to walk through the city or walk through life in such a way that as you go through it, things magically happen to you based on your ability to more or less not particularly care about what's going on, or even being aware of it, but more being aware and open to the possibilities of what the city can do around you. It's kind of like a mixture of Zen meditation and luck, where you sit there and let your mind just go for a while, and then you let the world kind of come to you and happen around you and bring these circumstances into your life. And that's kind of like the root concept of holy nonchalance.
Gotcha.
I try to live my life like that without the game.
Yeah. I think the game gives people a way to kind of tag their way into it a bit more if you're not, if you
Okay.
don't live in that mindset.
And maybe because I do, I mean, I'm not always in that mindset. I try to stay in that mindset. It's difficult to remain in it. So it may anchor, it may, even if you have that mindset already, kind of anchor you back into it. So
Yep.
that could be helpful. But for me, it was a little less magical to see it happen in a movie because of that.
Yeah. But for
Uh,
me, it was one of those where I'm sitting there and watching everybody get their minds open. And it's kind of like the first time you take part in a really good role-playing game or a LARP situation, or you decide to go out cosplaying or something like that. And except you're carrying this around with you, living like a kind of a secret agent of this alternate culture 24/7. And you can just see a lot of the people in the film light up when they start talking about it. And of course, there are some people, there's a scene where they talk to one guy who definitely took the game entirely too seriously and far too.
Uh,
Uh,
John and I were actually discussing him. We weren't sure if he was for real or not. At
are you
least
talking about? Are you talking about that guy that?
the guy that was kind of like low lit in that
yeah,
apartment.
Yeah, well, he was in a wheelchair. It looked like.
yeah.
Okay.
And he injured himself. Was he supposedly in the wheelchair because he injured himself, or was he in a
I
wheelchair?
never really got that one clarified, because part of me was like, maybe the idea is that he got injured doing the game and by taking it too far.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, there's another guy who broke into the basement of somebody else's house. And I think this was actually part of the design of the game.
Yeah,
And got into the tunnels under San Francisco and found this thing, but then couldn't get out. So they actually had to send a search party of players down there to get him.
That made me think of Devil and Daniel Johnston, where he just broke into that woman's apartment because he was going to get the devil out of her.
Yeah.
it made me think of Mazes and Monsters, where
I-
they
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I was definitely going to mention that movie today, but you go ahead because you've actually seen it. I only know about it conceptually.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. It reminded me of how they, went into those caves. And then also, after Tom Hanks' character kind of lost the plot, he decided to go and wander around in the netherworld of, what was that, New York, I think?
Yeah.
I don't
Does he
remember.
ever come out of the delusion? It's
No.
portrayed as a delusion in the movie, right?
Yeah, and no, he never comes out of it. In fact, he ends up permanently in the delusion. And I've always watched that movie, and I'm gearing up for the ending where he's locked in that delusion, and I envy him. Every time I watch that movie, by the end, I envy him. I hope that that's how I go out. Is ending my sanity, believing that I'm in that I'm a character of my choosing in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, psychologically, we are all characters anyway, so
Yeah.
you may as well assign your own character to who you want to be.
Sure, exactly. But I guess, like I say, I watch that and
But
I pray for an
yeah.
ending similar.
But I don't. I'm laughing not because I think that that's funny, but because of the way you're describing it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's my ultimate goal. So
Dave.
a thing like the Institute, for example, is a good example of how a person perhaps could exploit that type of situation in order to attempt to reach that goal.
Yeah.
So,
Especially for someone like me, who is currently with our pandemic and unwilling hikikomori, and
Yeah.
and would like to rejoin society eventually.
So Dave, and we'll let you guide the conversation to where you want it to go, but I just wanted to ask you kind of how I had a strange reaction to this movie. I didn't love it. I certainly found enough of it interesting, and it's worth checking out, I guess, especially. And some people are going to really respond to it. One thing that I felt made me feel really uneasy is that it's everybody in the movie is very lucky that the people running this experiment were ethical.
Yes.
because
wow.
it was very possible at any moment for that to go off the rails and turn into a Jonestown situation.
Yeah. And to me, I think that's kind of the part that's both a little scary and also kind of amazing about it, is that it was you can see the way that the tools could be used in a particularly unfortunate and terrible way. But I think that, of course, there's a punchline to this phrase, but I think that the person who did this had the best intentions, but also went hand in hand with a good set of ethics to go with it.
Right.
Somebody else could have definitely have used this as a means and a method of changing minds and doing bad things. But if you also look at a lot of the players, or at least the ones that they were interviewing, there's a certain element to our culture now that has kind of gotten used to, hey, there's this strange, odd experience that someone is giving to me. And at the very outset of the film, almost every person they talked to was expecting to be hit with like a marketing pitch for something, whether it was a product or a religion or something.
And that's today's society for you.
Yeah, because if the problem is that we're not allowed to just do something for the sake of having a good time with doing it. Everything that we do now has to have a focus and a purpose. In this case, it brought us, the thing that I like about it is that the guy had the sense of ethics to allow people to basically fall back into letting people play, the pure, simple innocence of play. And it was guided, but it was guided kind of like the same way you would be guided by a kindergarten teacher.
The stuff that I liked that made it feel like play was the stuff with the Sasquatch and stuff like that. I kind of wish it had maintained that level. It also kind of reminded me of this movie. I don't know if you guys have seen Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close.
I've not seen it.
So the kid in that movie, his father is played by Tom Hanks. He dies on 9/11. He's an autistic boy who has this ongoing game with his father before he dies, where they go on scavenger hunts throughout the city. And his dad left him the day he died. His dad left him, here's the game for today. So then he had to go out in the city and meet all these people that the game led him to. And it kind of reminded me of what's going on here. But one of the things that there's sort of an emotional correlation to what's going on there. One of the things that disappointed me slightly with this is that this movie seems to be going in that direction with Ava, but nothing really coalesces around Ava for me.
I think that the idea was that there's a series of podcasts I listened to from a group that called themselves Pacific Northwest Stories. And one of the things that goes on with that is like there's a podcast they put out called Tanis. And people are a little upset. Some of the fans are upset with Tanis because it hasn't reached a conclusion yet. But I love it because they keep adding more and more mythology on top of more and more mythology. And I'm really excited about that because to me, sometimes in a story, I don't want a resolution. What I want is more of the mythology and more of the characters and stuff. And I think that if he had, had the funding or managed to find a way to turn the entire thing around, he could have continued building and doing this for a long, long time if he'd felt like it.
So I wanted one thing that I thought was cool in a geeky kind of way. I watched when they finally show them the video that's supposed to indoctrinate them, or whatever the word you want to choose for the intro. When they actually sit down and watch the movie, it's got all these quick, rapid fire edits, and one of the things that they include in there is a shot from Phantasm 4.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So,
the guy completely filled
covered with silver
orbs.
spheres.
Yeah.
It's a part of me that it feels like, and I've been a long time RPG gamer, LARPer, Ren Fair. Long story short, I happen to think that this reality is not particularly interesting, boring, and often toxic. And so when somebody creates something that makes me feel like the world actually has a bit more of a positive center to it, where there's more possibilities than what we're given, that the motivations are not just greed, violence, and et cetera, I get a little excited about that. And to me, that was one of the things that I found really intrigued me about this, was that somebody was doing this simply for the sake of saying, let's make the world a little bit more interesting, a little bit more open, and a little bit more positive in terms of what it is what could happen.
I did have a moment during this movie where I started to get really invested in it and kind of got a little bit of goosebumps when the woman at the graveyard is talking about the experience.
Uh-huh.
Just they were. It seemed like it's whatever they were experiencing kind of brought them into the moment in a
Yep.
really tangible way.
There's people in there who really, in that space and in that time, kind of give themselves over to it and really allow themselves the opportunity to play. And I think that in the end would have been the worst part of all of this if it had turned out to be a marketing stunt, or I'm trying to sell you my religion. I think at that moment I would have found the person who was running the game and punched them in the face, because you turned this thing that really excited me into the same old shit, and God knows none of us need that anymore.
But doesn't it kind of turn into a Shaggy Dog joke at the end, where they're kind of at this meeting and they
the ending, everybody who has taken part in the game pretty much said that they hated the ending.
Mm-hmm.
But they were also the people who were running the game more or less had their hand forced over time. And so they had to give it an ending. And the ending itself was, I was sitting there going, I felt that the ending was the lamest part of the entire thing. But to me, it was all of the build-up. It was all of the world building. It was creating all of these little structures that you could find within a city that you had never even noticed before. It's like when I took John on a tour of Omaha. Mm-hmm. I didn't take him to all of the usual places that you would go to Omaha. Like we have, the UP building, and we've got a really great art museum. We've got a bunch of other things. You know what I want to do? I want to take you to this really cool little bar where the lighting is weird and we can have a great conversation, or a bookstore, or these things. I want to show people the city where the city lives, breathes, and exists.
Yep.
And what I don't want is to just sit there and go, here's all the touristy shit. Let's not do that.
I was actually going to say that, it reminded me of when I was in Omaha, because of the kind of eclectic kind of tour that we had, which to me was incredible. Those are that was, one of the reasons I set off on the journey that I did, is to experience exactly what I experienced in Omaha, amongst other places. But, when I was there, I mean, that was it, and of course, I
only got him to eat Bigfoot's ass.
Assaulting a Bigfoot. Yeah.
Yeah. Assaulting a Bigfoot. Like you do,
so the whole Sasquatch thing really kind of had a personal feel. Yeah. Because I had a brief relationship with a Sasquatch.
Yes.
Look, some of our best relationships have lasted about 20 minutes. We all know this, but
I'm not proud of it in any way, shape, or form, but at least he posed with me at the end for a photo.
Yeah.
Well, see, that right there really does say a lot about how it ended up for both of you, and for that I'm really proud.
Yeah, and he kind of looks like he was happy.
Sort of.
So I'm actually so you guys are into the RPG thing, and I'm into something that's equivalent. I just really love the idea of in-universe Star Wars stuff. I want to go to Galaxy's Edge. I just bought a lightsaber. I'm all about like actually trying to use that to enhance the way you look at life and things like that. So I understand the appeal of what this movie is doing. I guess there's two things that really kind of distance me from it. One is the man, this could really be misused thing, which through the entire movie kind of left a feeling of fear over me. Like at any moment these guys might start drinking Kool-Aid. Yeah. And then the other thing was the letdown at the end, which I guess wasn't enough for you not to dislike the movie, but was enough for me to feel like.
To me, it was. I walked away, and maybe it's just me because I'm that guy who sits down and does an awful lot of writing and does a lot of things. But when I was sitting there the entire time, and what energized me the most about this was sitting around and thinking, we could do something like this. We couldn't, we don't have the budget to do it on the scale that they did, but creating a sort of situation where it's a mixture of LARP and geocaching and
enhanced reality. It
all of a sudden a whole bunch. It coalesced a lot of ideas that have been sitting in the back of my brain into something that I was like, I want to see something like this happen, and perhaps even more importantly, I kind of want to do it.
You
Yeah.
said something like, let's get squishy. You want to make squishy reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
squishy reality has been an ongoing joke amongst friends of mine years ago. If you at some point, I'll take a picture. Maybe I'll put it in here for you to put in, but I'll show you the top shelf of my bookshelf,
Okay.
and it's all RPG books, and primarily a lot of it is World of Darkness and specifically Mage, where there are people who can basically sit there and go, "I'm bending reality simply by existing,"
Uh-huh.
and I sit here, and especially, let's just say over the last 4 years especially, but over the last 25 years, reality has fallen into this rather unfortunate element of it's the same motivations being run again and again. It's greed, it's religion, it's violence, and it all, but the problem is that the stakes keep getting consistently higher with the same stupid fucking motivations. And to me, what I want to do is change the motivations and then say, all right, let's make the world into something different. I want a world where I want a world that's kind of like a mixture of Mage, the Venture Brothers, a bunch of other things, just because then at least it would be more interesting and far more fun.
What do you feel about having, in addition to, John has the Mythos approved. I think Dave should have, anytime there's a movie that kind of reminds him of this, Squishy approved.
Squishy
approved. Yes.
I think so.
Okay.
I agree with that one.
And then I'll find something for me that is related to what I'm drawn to. We'll each have our own stamp.
kind of wanted to give my thoughts on this a bit. I feel like I need to rate the content of the film and the film itself in two different
I'm
ways.
kind of with you on that.
Yeah, because I feel that the subject of the film, actually is probably a better way to put it, is definitely a press play. But the execution of the film itself, I'm kind of with Dan where it didn't coalesce for me as far as the actual execution of the filming of what they were trying to achieve. I understand it partly, like Dave said, because we're
LARPers.
We're alternate reality people. I mean, we are the PCs of the real world, and all those other people out there that are just walking around, going to work, coming home, doing their chores, watching, commercial TV, and then going to sleep are NPCs. And we are the player characters of the world. And so the content speaks to me in a different way than the actual film itself, because I think that the filmmakers could have made a much better film. So I press eject on the film itself, but I press play on the content or the subject matter.
And for me, I'm kind of with you on that, because like the first 2/3 of the film leave me incredibly excited, and then the last third kind of falls flat for me. I'll be perfectly honest. But to me, the thing that really excites me about it is the ideas that it explores and the concepts that it lays in front of you and says, hey, you're looking at the world through the same lens all the time. Let's switch this up and change it. And to me, that was the part that's still like, there are certain films I get to a certain point and I just stop watching. And this film, there's about the 2/3 mark lately, and I just stop.
Yeah.
But when I feel the need to be energized creatively, I watch about the first 45 minutes of this film, and I'm really excited. Also, the director of this film has a thing about another alternate reality thing, another film about it. And I want to look it up and take a look to see what it is that he's got going on. So that could be another one that we look at about a year down the road.
I feel kind of the same way John was. I think the subject is way more interesting and deserving of a better movie than the movie is. I think the experience would be really awesome, and there were moments where I was like, man, that would be really cool. But the structure of the movie is made in such a way that it kind of by necessity sets up expectations that dashes, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should mention that things are going to get a little squishy with us three blokes in a couple of ways. Dave has a project that he's mulling around. I don't know if you want to share as much of that as you'd like with us.
I'm working on an idea for a LARP / RPG, et cetera, game for people that I know in this area. But there is a part of me that kind of wants to involve the various and sundry groups that I know, both like in Nebraska and in Wisconsin, and then some people I know in California, and turning it into something bigger. But that's further down the road. But the idea is, I am stealing an idea from this is for my game, which is not for profit. So I don't want the Pacific Northwest Stories people coming out to sue me. But I'm stealing a concept from a podcast they did called Rabbits, which is so far there's only one season of it, but they're talking a second one, where there's a group of people who are playing a game. And the idea is that the game itself helps to reset and, shall we say, defrag reality. And the idea is that the players are going to represent different groups that are all looking for the objects so that they can all have a hand in how it is that reality is going to get basically reset and put back on course. And every time one of these groups manages to successfully pull it off, it helps to push their agenda forward. And so I've written up the most basic elements of it, and I'm drafting various creatives that I know to either help me co-write it and work up ideas. So you two schmucks are probably going to get drafted into this. And then also I want to do...
That was a nice reaction. Sorry, go ahead.
Well,
There was a thumbs up, but it was just that the timing was
all
funny.
for it.
Okay. The idea is I want to create a circumstance where, like, I'm going to be drafting various people to take part in the multimedia elements, where you'll find a website or a YouTube video or something that'll give you more and more clues on it. So this is going to take about a year's worth of development before it really picks up and turns into a thing. But I am looking for people to both take part in the multimedia element and also to play in the game. So if you're watching, send along a link or send along yourself and let me know what you think.
The thing that John and I have been planning for a while, or talked about for almost like a year and a half now, but he's actually put a little bit on the website now. If you want to go to us3blokes.com, we are going to do a video project that is framed sort of as a Jedi school.
Nice.
Where and Dave, obviously, you are a full participant as much as you want to be.
Thank you. I'm just got to find the time, and maybe I'll drag some of that into my thing, or drag you guys into my thing.
Exactly. Basically, we're just going to analyze all 12 of the movies. I'm going to include Star Wars Holiday Special in there, and we're going to dive so deeply into these movies that it's going to be like a film course.
Yeah, if you go to us3blokes.com and click on the Jedi 101 tab, you'll find a tentative timeline for this project. And what it is basically, like Dan said, is going to be a deep delve of galactic scale into the realm of Star Wars, the Skywalker saga.
Well, I think it extends beyond the Skywalker saga.
Oh, sure.
Because we're going to be doing Rogue One, all that kind of stuff too.
Oh yeah, but that's part of the Skywalker saga.
It's part
in my humble opinion.